Hey guys, welcome to today's video in which we'll be doing a free agency review of the NFC West. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and without further ado we'll move on to the first team, which is the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks adopted a relatively conservative approach to the free agency period, not really splashing out on any signings. Their main acquisition came from trading for Quinton Dunbar. I think this was a really good trade and will really bolster their secondary because he's a really solid starting cornerback, and they only gave up a 5th round pick for him. They also signed tight end Greg Olsen. He's still a pretty decent tight end despite his age. He should be a really nice target for Russell Wilson, and it certainly improves that position. On top of that, they re-signed Bruce Irvin after he'd left for a few years and provides them with an experienced edge rusher. In terms of departures, the Seahawks' defensive line was seriously depleted. Disappointing to lose Clowney. In all likelihood, he hasn't signed anywhere else yet, but the reports are that he won't be re-signing with the Seahawks after trading for him last August. On top of that, they lost backup defensive ends such as Ezekiel Ansah. This really means it's a position that needs to be addressed in the draft. With Josh Gordon unsigned as well, and still on the exempt list, it may be the case that his NFL career is over and he's run out of second chances. Overall, I've graded the Seahawks with a B-. Their defensive line is a clear concern despite them being able to re-sign defensive tackle Jarran Reed. However, having said that, the Seahawks have always been a team that's built up through the draft, particularly in the Pete Carroll era, so I'm sure they'll at least be in the playoff hunt come the end of next season. The next team we're looking at are the Arizona Cardinals. Their biggest move was obviously trading for DeAndre Hopkins, and I thought they did a great job essentially trading a 2nd round pick and David Johnson for probably the 2nd best receiver in the league, maybe 3rd, if you'd have Julio Jones and Michael Thomas above him. On top of that, they also tagged Kenyon Drake. I also thought this was a pretty good move as he impressed in the second half of the season after being traded from the Dolphins. And although David Johnson was struggling with injuries at this time, Drake was definitely outperforming him. They also made moves to improve their defensive front 7 with signings such as Phillips, Kennard and Campbell. They'll be hoping that at least one of them, or more probably all of them, will be able to provide additional pass rush and complement All-Pro Chandler Jones. David Johnson was certainly the most notable departure that they suffered, but as I mentioned earlier, Drake outperformed him at the end of last season, so it shouldn't really hurt them too much at all. They also lost defensive tackle Rodney Gunter, but Phillips should be an upgrade over him. Overall, I've graded the Cardinals with an A+. I honestly don't think this off-season could have gone any better for them up to this point. They've added one of the best receivers in the league for very little, and I certainly think they're in a position where they'll be able to compete for the first time since Carson Palmer was their starting quarterback. The next team we're looking at are the Los Angeles Rams. They were largely limited by their lack of cap space due to poor financial control over the last few off-seasons, and this really came back to bite them this year. They signed Leonard Floyd on a 1-year prove-it deal to see if he can have a breakout season following his inconsistent time with the Bears after being picked 9th overall back in 2016. They also signed defensive tackles Robinson and Brockers, and they should be able to provide support for superstar defensive tackle Aaron Donald, potentially meaning that teams won't be able to double-team him every single play. In terms of departures, the Rams suffered significant losses both on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. Gurley, Littleton and Fowler all played crucial roles in them making the Super Bowl just 2 seasons ago. The team was severely handicapped by poor management in prior off-seasons. Goff's on a massive contract, Gurley was on a huge contract, Brandon Cooks was on a massive contract. On top of that, to make things even worse, they lost superstar kicker Greg Zuerlein. He'd been one of the most reliable kickers in the league for a while, and losing him on top of that really does worsen their situation. Overall, I've graded the Rams with a D. Whilst this might seem a bit harsh, years of mismanagement culminated into one disastrous off-season where they lost numerous not just starters but key contributors on both sides of the ball. Despite that though, I still think the team is talented enough to reach the playoffs come next season, so it's certainly too early to rule them out completely. The final team in today's video are the San Francisco 49ers. In terms of the signings they made, they focused more on re-signing their current players rather than delving into the free agency market, with the signings of safety Jimmy Ward and defensive end Eric Armstead being the most notable ones. I thought the Armstead deal in particular was particularly risky. They gave him a huge contract, $85 million over 5 years, and considering he's only had one season that's been really good where he got to double-digit sacks, I'm just not convinced about this one. Jimmy Ward has also had troubles with injuries, so they've given him quite an expensive contract, which also comes with some risk. In terms of the other signings they made, they re-signed cornerback Jason Verrett, and hopefully he can get himself healthy, because I still think he has a chance to be one of the top shutdown corners in the league, which he showed flashes of before, of course, his career was decimated by injuries. In terms of departures, the most notable one was certainly DeForest Buckner, likely a player that they weren't going to be able to keep long term because he would have demanded a large contract as well. So getting such a high pick, 13th overall, seems like particularly good business. They also lost wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders. He got quite an expensive contract with the Saints, so understandable why they weren't willing to pay him, particularly considering he only had a limited impact after being traded to the 49ers from the Broncos mid-season. Overall, I've graded the 49ers with a B-. I thought the Armstead contract in particular was extremely risky, especially considering, as I said earlier, he has only had one season where he's reached double-digit sacks. However, on the counter of that, I really like the trade involving DeForest Buckner. They managed to get the 13th overall pick, and they should have their pick at one of the top receivers in the draft, which will be a good replacement for the departing Sanders. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already, please check out some of the other videos on my channel and comment your thoughts on the teams in this video below.